You can, if you want. And it's on. Sure.
Wow, thank you for coming tonight. Wasn't it a wonderful beginning? Yeah. These MC2 conferences are really a blessing, and they're unique, and we should just thank the Lord that there are so many people interested in missionary member care and want to be involved and be improved, care, show love, help when needed. It's great. It's great. And I'd like to just ask you, how many of you have been missionary couples overseas? Excellent. Excellent. How many of you presently are on some mission committee in your church? Great. Great. It just helps us to know who are we talking to here and what level of experience do you have. And you're going to have an opportunity to give us some input as well. Well, we can learn from many people here at MC2 about the best ways to walk alongside, support our cross-cultural workers, and so these days, like we have already, hearing words like risk and rest and resilience and attrition, unfortunately, theology of risk, theology of suffering, it all comes together. A few years ago, there was an MC2 entitled Too Valuable to Lose. And really, our cross-cultural workers aren't too valuable to lose. It holds true today. And so our workshop focuses on understanding our missionary couples and stressors that they face on the field, and how do we respond? How do we listen and hear and help and pray and support? Be looking at those sorts of things. How do we encourage? Let me share with you a true story about a couple who worked in South Sudan. They knew at the very beginning they were going into a risky area. They knew it. Older couple, so their children weren't with them any longer. Given the assignment to bring English to a town of about 200,000 people, a university there, because they were just at the time of changing from Arabic to English. Everybody wanted to learn English. And so this couple went, isolated, armies in town, not one, not two, not three, 4 armies in town. North, South, Joint, and UN. Guns everywhere. No food to buy. Came from the north. North was closed part of that time. Isolated in that any roads had not been worked on for about 50 years and were landmined besides, so they had to fly in and fly out. Okay, so this couple, teach English and take care of a base, a missionary base, and establish some work and work with the government to bring in more missionaries if possible. Break-ins, heat, 100, 120, no food. You get the picture. At the end of those 4 years that they worked there, the people they worked with, the church, and they had a party. And at the party, there were speeches and refreshments, and it was. We were told it was very interesting to listen to the speeches, because you always have speeches at parties, don't you? Do there. And what was brought up was not the preaching or the teaching that was given, or what was brought up was relationships, especially the relationship between the husband and wife. The house help said, you people didn't really argue too much, and the husband didn't beat the wife. Amazing. And they said, you know, I kind of like that practice of walking together. You husband, you wife, you walk together in town. We kind of like to do that. The fact is, what was most important, what really came across to the people, a Christian life, is the way they saw that marriage, that union. It's that kind of thing we want our missionaries to have, that the couple to have, that relationship. Now, many of you have worked overseas, so this is going to be an easy exercise for you. We could talk about stressors that couples have here, and we all know about that, but what are some of the stressors that are particular to a couple who are serving cross-culturally? And we'd like to get your input on this a little bit. What are some of the particular stressors that are there for a marriage in a cross-cultural setting, in a missionary setting? Some ideas? Particular stressors, yes?
Lack of privacy.
Lack of privacy. Absolutely. In a fishbowl. Yes.
Children's safety.
Yes. Safety of your children. Absolutely. Sir?
In your birth culture, you've learned how to put wax in your cracks. We all have cracks in relationships, but we've learned how to cover them over in culturally appropriate ways. When you get into another culture, basically the wax melts out of your cracks.
Well put. Well put. Yeah.
Hi, Sandy.
Well put, yes, ma'am.
Stressors of everyday living that happen overseas, like plumbing problems, no water, no electricity, solar panels, all that stuff.
All that stuff that we really don't have to deal with here, thank the Lord, but it's there. And well, we do work with it somewhat, but it gets to be frustrating when you just can't get things working. Yeah. Sir?
Different or no support system.
Absolutely. Different or no support system. Certainly different, maybe absent. Yeah. Sir?
Stresses of communication, learning new languages, all that.
Yeah. I don't know about the couples here. My wife's a linguist. I have a hard time with many different languages we worked with. One we both learned well, that's Swahili. But Swahili is an easy language to learn. But yes, the frustration of not being able to talk or joke or share Jesus in a way that they understand.
Needs of the people.
The needs of the people is another stressor. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we see that, but very often the people we're working with, that's life. But we have to adjust. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Different ministry roles for husband and wife, and they're not together, they're different.
Different ministry roles. They're there. It could be different, complementary, hopefully, but yeah.
Schooling for your children, especially like boarding schools, sending kids away.
For some, yeah, the option is to send them far away, and it's not easy. Even though we have good boarding schools in many parts of the world, it's not easy as a parent. Yes, ma'am.
Spiritual attacks or spiritual battles?
Spiritual battles. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I mean, intensified. Because whose territory are you going into?
Pregnancy and giving birth overseas, particularly
Primitive health care. And so with pregnancies and other diseases that are prevalent, malaria we don't really worry about here, or some of the others that are prevalent. Yes?
Missionary budget, finances?
Finances, interesting. Right. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that, so I won't dwell on that right now. Yes?
Team conflicts and organizational dysfunction.
How do we get along with our team members who are so different, and they're part of the team, and we got to get along? Intercultural skills, cross-cultural, intercultural, personal skills. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
difficulty in finding dating options in terms of places to go on a date as a husband and wife. Who do you leave your children with?
Okay. Dating with your wife, having those special times that you leave your children with. Where do you go? In some cases, there's nowhere to go. That's special. You make your special places, but yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Different gender roles that are in the culture can cause friction, and maybe lack of role models for healthy marriages or mentors
Okay.
to help.
So, different. Let me see if I remember.
Different things.
Different gender roles.
Gender roles.
Lack of role models.
The lack of role models, absolutely.
Unexpected temptations caused by changes in cultural norms.
Yes, unexpected temptations due to changes in cultural norms. Absolutely. Identifying with the people, but being careful that you're actually walking the path that you need to walk as a witness of the Lord. I'll take one or two more. You're amazing. This is great.
To separation sometimes due to travel, and also sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment and separations due to your work, travel. Yeah. One more.
The opposite of that one, being together more than you're used to.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay, the last one.
Finding places to rest, like to go on vacation, because sometimes travel, like in Africa, is very expensive.
It is.
Plane ride. So if there's not a lot of choices in your country, then you have to get creative again. That's fine.
Yeah. Where do you go, or the expense to take the rest times you need to get away and to recharge. Thank you. Now, fortunately, all of these things that we mentioned are applicable at one time to one couple. It'd be pretty hard.
But many of them are. Many of these overlap. Cumulative stress.
We gotta work together here. I'm going to hand over to Debbie now, who's going to be sharing, okay, what does this mean? How can we address this and help our cross-cultural workers? So Debbie, I give it to you. I'm not sure if you should wear it.
we were thinking of more of the audience being of people who are in the churches or the supporting organizations, the supporters, and how you can support your missionary couples. Of course, this will also apply to any of us as we go to fellow teammates and their marriages. So in order to make it a little bit more real, we're going to do it a little enactment. I'd like you to be watching for what works and what doesn't work in this care for a missionary marriage.
Hello, anybody here?
Oh, hi.
Hi. Hi.
Okay, hi Debbie.
Yeah, you came a little late, but that's fine.
Well,
The snow, you know, there's the snow.
yeah.
Yeah, we get snow here.
Yeah.
Well, come on in.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you.
Sorry to track in your carpet here.
I'm going to just grab this so
Yeah.
we can hear.
Yeah, well, it's nice
Yeah.
of you to invite us.
Yeah, let's see. Where were you serving again? Where were you serving?
Well, we were in Africa.
We were
In Africa.
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, in
Yeah.
Africa. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
All right.
We've been part of your congregational support for about 10 years now.
About 10
About 10
About 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
With our congregation?
Yes.
Oh,
Could,
okay.
could we sit down?
Yeah, why don't you sit down?
Push it.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks.
And I'm Gail. And this is Mike.
Hi, Gail. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I'm Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie.
Yeah, we've appreciated knowing that you're on the mission support team for us. That's been important.
We've come with a little problem that we wanted to share with you, if that's okay.
I was hoping to hear some good stories today. Don't missionaries have a lot of good things that have happened? I mean, we have enough bad things here. Can you tell me some good stories first? What good's been going on?
Oh, so many women are coming now for fellowship time, and they're really wanting to share scripture. That's been good. Yeah, that's encouraging. And they're teaching their children scripture verses. That's been very encouraging. Yeah, as they learn to read, they're teaching their children.
I agree with her. But we came with a little problem. We thought we would spend some time with you and share. Okay. We had this disagreement on how to use our mission money. My wife really wants to use mission money to go on a holiday. I mean, the beach. And we don't. I'm feeling that this money was given, for our work, and I still feel that.
Well, it.
Speak loud.
But the mission money is given for our total life. Our total, when people give money, when our donors are giving money, they know that all of life this money is to help all of life. It's our support for everything.
So, my wife feels we should probably take some time off, but I'm thinking we really can't afford it because that money should go towards our mission work. So we thought we'd come and talk to you.
Well, I agree with you.
I knew we should come here.
Just anything good. Hello? Okay. Okay, what worked? Anything work? The door?
They came in.
Okay, yes.
There was somebody for them to meet with.
There was somebody for them to meet with. That's true. That's true. Okay, what didn't work? What are some of the things that you picked up on that didn't work? Exaggerated, of course, but yeah.
Caregivers seemed unaware that they were actually serving from the church. They seemed surprised and didn't really know much about them.
Right. Caregiver didn't seem surprised, didn't even seem to know much about them. Yes.
The caregiver wasn't being very welcoming and nurturing.
Not very welcoming or nurturing. Right. Yes.
Caregiver wasn't a leader. They're just like, okay, I choose this.
Right. Caregiver chose a side, wasn't very neutral.
Yeah, just agreeing with the side of the caregiver not being very welcoming or inviting. Just saying that she had a very inconvenienced attitude, which caused their communication to shut down when they weren't able to talk about anything openly, because they felt like they were
Inconvenient. Right. Right. Inconvenient. Inconvenient. And I'm sorry. It's late. I had another really long day. Felt very inconvenienced. She was not welcoming. I was not welcoming. Mm-hmm.
She had more of an agenda. I want you to tell me some happy stories versus really being open to what they needed to share.
Right. The caregiver had her own agenda. Tell me the good stories versus what would you like to share with me? How many of you have had some kind of experience in your life where you felt so not listened to, not cared about? Someone with their own agenda in one way or another. Mike, where's the, oh, here's the clicker. It's not on.
It's just try that.
Okay. Maybe not. So, what does it mean to be safe and welcoming? How are you safe? How do you give those messages that you're safe? Any ideas? 1 Peter, yes.
I think a sense of comfort.
Sense of comfort. First of all, just regular hospitality, right? Offering them to come in, to sit down, to have some water. Eye-to-eye contact. You have enough time for them. And 1 Peter 3:8 says, be sympathetic, love as brothers, be compassionate and humble. To be safe too, we have to let them know that we're going to listen. We're not the kind that are going to pass on the gossip, right? For a lot of people, and people in ministry, where do you go? And a lot of you who have been in ministry, and you come back, where do you go with the real story? Most people want to hear just the exciting, good things, right? And if you share it, what will happen to your support? Or where will that go?
You don't go to your own organization, you don't go to your own church.
You don't go to your own organization, you don't go to your own church.
You better have a friend somewhere else you can talk to, otherwise you're stuck.
Right. Somewhere else. You need someone else to go to, or you're stuck.
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. Right. So how many of you have had the opportunity of being those caregivers, those listeners, those safe people for someone else. Good. So you know that. Maybe you're a member care person, or maybe you're just a caring person that others can sense that you're going to listen and you're going to care. Want to be able to start with prayer. There's no prayer here, was there? Starting with prayer is often also very comforting to the person in ministry, the global worker, knowing that you care enough to bring it before the Lord. And asking open questions, inviting, wondering, clarifying questions. Not telling them what to do, not saying, well, that isn't what I thought should happen, or why? Why is that? Rather, how? How has this affected you? What has been the most difficult? How has this affected your marriage? Because a lot of issues affect marriage, don't they? And there might be very different ways of reacting. Not judging or giving advice. For some people, it's very easy to listen and just care and just listen to the story. And for those who have more of the way of thinking of problem solving, that might be a growth edge. It's much easier to jump in and give the solutions. And sometimes that's the problem in the marriage, isn't it? One of them wants to just share what's going on and what they're feeling and how difficult it is, and the other one right away wants to give the answers. Right away wants to solve it. And that isn't at all what the other person wanted. They just wanted somebody to listen. Yes?
So your relationship started with them only 10 years after they got back. And something that usually never happens is a reply to a prayer letter. Hey, I read it and I prayed for you. Especially the part where you said, and you mentioned something in the letter, you prayed for them. But over those 10 years, you could have ended up building a relationship that didn't begin right here.
Yes. So the suggestion was the relationship needs to begin, or whenever possible, begins before they come to visit. Such as even just responding, even briefly, to the prayer letter. I'm praying for you, or mentioning something in the prayer letter that you are praying for, that they know that you are praying, and that knowing that someone is alongside of you praying and isn't writing back trying to give you the answers either, begins that relationship, begins that caring. Encouraging and validating each one's experience and perspective without taking sides. And that's why, too, it can be really good if you are a couple to, as a couple, invite the global partner couple over. Couple to couple is really good. It's a safer than just, the female with... Oh, that one. Okay. Right. The female with the male and so forth, sometimes it's harder to feel for one or the other to feel that you really get my perspective. So having both is really helpful when you can minister together. And that's true when you're with the locals too, isn't it? Couple to couple. Sometimes it's not going to be appropriate anyway for the female alone or the male alone. Okay, and sharing ideas, stories, and resources is good after you've listened to their story and sharing from them what's worked for you before. Have you ever been in this situation before? How did you work it out? How have you done, in this case, how have you done your vacation time in the past or your rest time? It is expensive to take that, and maybe you only have so much support. How have you made that work? Well, we haven't taken rest. And yet that is important, validating that it's important, but yet using the support money that's needed for something else, maybe that doesn't work. Helping them to explore other options, or in this case, certainly offering, maybe we can go to the mission committee and talk to them about your need for a break and that you don't have enough funds. Maybe there's another way to meet this. Maybe there's some extra funds available. Just throwing out different ideas. One of the things too for couples that I'm sure those of you who are couples have experienced is that it's not just the problem they come with, right? There's much more to it than that. So they came with the difference of what are we going to do about this vacation. But it's probably a pattern that they get into, right? A vicious cycle that becomes a negative cycle in their relationship. And so sometimes it's just helpful to say, when she says we need a break, Gail, what are you feeling when he says no, we just don't have the money? What's underneath that for you? Getting to the feeling level for them? Well, I feel like he doesn't listen, and I can see he's down. I can see he's depressed, and it's affecting our marriage, and I feel not listened to, and there's so much more. And then for him too, what is it like when she says, well, we just got to do it, and there isn't the funds, and you're feeling, what are you feeling towards your supporters? I'm feeling guilty. And so to be able to help them go deeper with their feelings and realize that probably this is a cycle they get into, and how can they recognize it sooner and get out of that? Conflict is inevitable, but how do we resolve it? How do we resolve it? And conflict in itself isn't bad, but it's the resolving. It's resolving it. And can we stop long enough to listen to the deeper needs and ask those deeper questions? And sometimes that's what somebody else, a neutral third person, can do. Sometimes when we get into those, maybe a lot of conflict, and that can happen with global partner or missionary family marriages just as well as any marriage, it gets to the point where it really feels like the other person doesn't care, and they almost become the enemy when we're all revved up in our emotions, right? And it's good to remember my marriage partner is not the enemy. It's really that negative cycle we're getting into that's the enemy, and we need to beat that cycle. So, and of course we all know that the hope is that we can all recognize our own part in the conflict and to lay our own frustrations before the Lord. My encouragement is that sometimes we feel like, well, I don't have all that training to know how to work with a marriage. Maybe I can listen to an individual, but how do I help people in their marriages? I can give my own experiences, but what if we run into something? And again, as we know, those of us who are doing already the care for others, the biggest thing that we can do is listen and care. And sometimes that's all people need, is just somebody to really care about what's going on, and then to kind of, help them to say what's worked before, what hasn't. Sounds like both of these both have valid points, and just validate them, and validate that it's a real issue and it's stressful and it's difficult. If you run into places where you don't feel like they're able to come up with something, or you are, and you can see there's a pattern that's maybe deeper or has roots from the past, and you don't know if you know how to deal with it, that's where you refer them, right? You refer them maybe to someone who has more experience. It might be in the member care area of the mission, or it might be a professional counselor, a Christian who has worked a lot with marriages and can help people identify what's working, what isn't working, and to make those changes. And of course, a big part of it too is prayer. Make sure we end with prayer. Gail, you have some resources?
let's see, I believe when you came in that you were handed a sheet of resources. And if you don't have one, raise your hand and we'll get one to you. There's one up here, and now I put together this list of resources, keeping in mind that this particular breakout session was part of this Church Missionary Care 101, those basic kinds of things for those of us who are doing missionary care, member care, and following the breakout sessions for that track. So these are resources for you as caregivers. Now, I did not put any resources, any books that are particularly for couples and marriage. I can mention a few recommended books at the end of the time, but I wanted to mainly encourage you to think about or to become aware of these various resources that are out there to help you as caregivers to learn more about the world of our missionary couples and to become more aware of the kinds of things that we talked about, these stressor kinds of things. They came up like popcorn because so many of you have experienced them. But if we haven't been on the field and haven't had those kinds of experiences, maybe they're a little hard to think about. So I listed, and mainly in this day and age, I listed the online resources first, because that seems to be where we go for things. As you look at these, as you explore them, go into the A Life Overseas. Read some of those blog entries, and it will just help you understand a little bit more about what people are talking about, these missionaries overseas. But on that particular site, look under the resources, and you'll find lots of good information for counseling, opportunities for reentry and debriefing resources, those kinds of things that as you think about coming alongside your missionary couples, that they will give you some ideas maybe on how your congregation might offer help for your people that might be beneficial. It's the same thing for the Barnabas International website. Rich resources there. And that one includes a marriage bibliography with good books, recommended books that you might put into the hands of your couples. For you as caregivers, Brigada is a good one to know about, just so you can learn more about what's happening and what people are talking about in the missions world. And as I looked at the last issue of that one, there was a mention of a marriage retreat. So I clicked through and learned a little bit about that. But Brigada is a good resource for that kind of thing. Networking and member care is really, really vital. It's so important, and it's happening. So become a part of the Global Member Care Network. And that's a place where you can post your questions. For example, we have a couple looking for a retreat, and they live in this part of the world. Is there anybody out there who knows where we can recommend them to go? And that's the place, that's the forum for that kind of thing. Very helpful. The member care media is all audio kinds of things that Trans World Radio has done. And they have excellent, excellent resources on cross-cultural workers, and they have a really good one on marriage. So bring it up and listen, and encourage your people to go there and listen to those resources. The missionary care one, missions and mental health resources from the Koteskis. Those are all downloadable for free ebooks, and they have put together some very invaluable resources. They've got a good series on missionary marriage that would give you some insights, and also things that you might be able to share with your your couples. The mobile member care team has a toolbox, again, of very helpful resources. Thrive Ministries does retreats for women, and oftentimes when mama's happy, everybody in the house is happy. Now, Amy Young talked about Velvet Ashes. They've done a really good job on resources for missionary women. So have a look at that one, and they've got a good resource section. Now, on the back side, I listed a few marriage workshops and retreats kinds of things. If that's what your congregation wants to do for your people, is enable them, facilitate that they can go on a marriage retreat. Some of those happen when they're back in the U.S. or wherever they're from. Some of them happen overseas. The pre-field training, think about that for helping your missionaries be prepared to go for your couples. Think about ways that you can get them some pre-field training, and there are some options there. And then books for member care providers, that's for you. There's a real proven standby classic called Honorably Wounded that can give you some very basic practical insights into the lives of your workers, your missionary couples. Another one is the Mind the Gaps. I do have copies of those here to show you what it is. That's a good one for churches and doing missionary care. It's very basic, very practical, and just like serving as senders. That's another very practical one for we as senders. And then Tender Care is one that it's come out of Barnabas. Now, Barnabas International is one of the sponsors of the MC2. That, again, it's very practical, written in layman's terms that can help us as caregivers learn about this whole really, really vital part of taking care of our missionaries. Yeah.
Yes. Well, all of you were married overseas as missionaries, and you came back in the field. What are things that you appreciated that helped you when you came back that your church or sending organization did for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the question is, when we came back, what things were helpful for us? What did we appreciate that our churches, our missions, our sending organizations did for us? Would anybody like to answer that?
Just ask you.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, one thing was, enabling us to have some couple time. Maybe, letting us use their second home or their cabin for just some time away, just to come back to reflect, to process, to think through what we had experienced, where we had been, what might be coming next. That was a real important thing. One thing we found that as children if you take good care of our children, you take good care of us. That's another really important one.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that in our last 2 terms when we were overseas, our home congregation started advocate teams. And so 10 or 12 within our congregation were meeting on a monthly basis praying for us. And so we were accountable to them. We gave them prayer requests and let them know how those were answered. Knowing that they were praying for us was huge. And so we came back about 2 years ago, and we thought, and we're continuing in the home office, so we thought that's the end of the A-team. No, they said, we got to keep meeting and praying, keep informing us about what's happening in your mission world. That was huge to me.
Anybody else have something you'd like to bring up? Mm-hmm.
So our senior pastor met with my wife and I, and he said, look, we're compelling people in our church to get busy and involved and do these things. You guys ignore all that. Just rest. You know, take time.
Take time and rest.
Don't rush into anything. No one's pushing you.
Good.
And that was just huge.
Gave you permission to rest. And kind of soak in things. Probably you were probably a little brittle and just needed, you're like a dry sponge, you needed some feeding.
No filters left.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Our Barnabas team does practical things. So they take us to the grocery store. They took me to the grocery store. She told me not to shop for 6 months because that's what I was used to in my place. Like, you can go to the grocery store every day when you live in America, but just getting all the practical things set up. One of my friends helped me set up a budget, and they said, here's how much you can expect to pay for food, a food budget, because I had no idea how much food costs in America anymore, or a lot of the women would buy us clothes, or they get clothes ready for the season that we were in when we were here. So all kinds of practical helps that you think, oh, they won't want that. They're independent Americans, but people don't always have like an idea. Help them figure out where to go for eye doctors, or where to go for insurance, or all those kind of practical things.
So your Barnabas team really came alongside with very practical helps for you when you came on your home assignment.
Well, we were deported from a Muslim country, and we had sold our home and had gotten rid of a lot of our possessions, so we were coming home to nothing very unexpectedly, and our church helped us with housing and came and helped, the kids to feel like they were invited to children's things at church, so they were really looking at meeting both our physical, needs as well as, just emotional, and then we had to go through debriefing, and we're very encouraging because of the stress of the event. We needed to go do some post-traumatic stress stuff, and the church was very behind our going and doing that as well.
So the church seemed to really understand what you had experienced, and then were ready there to help you with very practical and also very emotional, and just the physical, emotional, mental, just the whole holistic response to your time of stress. Yeah, thank you.
Just being on the committee, the missions committee, and I've done short-term missions, but not ever been stationed for a long time anywhere. But I just need to say how much I appreciate people telling us. And don't be afraid to say this would be really helpful, because our hearts are, let us help. But when you haven't been there, it's so hard to know. And if you tell us, usually it's like, oh really, that would be helpful? We're so grateful to know what would help. So we love the people that we support, but we don't get to know them. It's usually a letter, and it's not a real personal thing. So just so you know, the more you're willing to tell us, the more we appreciate it.
Yeah, we want to know. Please tell us what would be helpful. How can we help you? What would really minister to you? Thank you.
And even knowing that some questions to ask, sometimes you're afraid of insulting people that are coming back. So you kind of keep your mouth shut because you don't want to be insensitive. So anyway, open communication.
Open communication, yes, thank you.
As a supporter, what really touched me was we had a family that we walked alongside. Our children were exactly the same ages, same gender, So we walked alongside them as they were out in the field. But what we appreciated from them is when they would come home on leave, they always made a point of spending half a day or so with us. So we got that face-to-face communication. We saw our children as they had grown up in two different places. And one thing that amazed us, and we as all four parents talked about at one time, was the similarities in our children more than the differences. And yet they were, one grew up in South America, one here.
So the blessing of that intentional connection time when you were able to do that face to face.
It helped us to be more faithful supporters.
Yes, yes. Well, I think our time is running out. If you want to have a look at these books that I brought along, there's many, many more. But just I wanted to mention the some of the marriage resources. I did want to mention that, but where did the paper go? Oh, yeah, no. Anything by Gary Chapman, the love languages person. One book that Mike and I found very, very helpful for our own marriage was Now You're Speaking My Language by Gary Chapman. And it helped us to read through that book together and to just learn about our own communication styles and what hindered our communication. Anything by Gary Smalley. Anything by...
Here you go.
Oh yeah, that's it. Good. By John Townsend and Henry Cloud, like Boundaries for Marriage, those kinds of things. His Needs, Her Needs by Will Harley. The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by Gottman, John Gottman. Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs. Just a few, but if you would, ask your pastor, ask the people on your staff at church what you would recommend as marriage resources for your people. There are just so many good ones out there.
I was just going to say, you just got a sheet too that we didn't want to pass out earlier just because we were wanting the participation of all of you and not to give answers to you ahead of time. But, and these aren't necessarily answers, but this is kind of what we talked about. We didn't have a lot of time to go into a lot of detail, but if that's helpful for you, some of the types of questions or the kinds of things that are helpful to talk to people about. And in the end is my email too. If some of you are saying, oh, I wish I had that list of books that Gail was mentioning, good books on marriage, and you're not finding what you're not sure about it, you're not finding it, or you want that list, if you just email me, we can send out a list of good books on marriage as well.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We realize it's 1 out of 4 options. Thank you for coming. May you be blessed. I just want to send you off with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Marriage is on field. There are stresses. There is the spiritual battle going on too. We want to pray, dear God, that we can be an encouragement and a help. And we want to pray for the cross-cultural marriages, or cross-cultural workers who are here tonight too, that they would be blessed by MC2. So we pray for safety as we go our way tonight, bring us back tomorrow refreshed and ready to learn much more. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all.
And you're very welcome to take a picture of the stressors thing on your phone if you want. It's just there.
My son.
Mike's here. Of course he will be here.
He loves it. Thanks,
Yeah, but I feel that I'm gonna pass it.
Yeah. Just take the time, because otherwise it's just not gonna happen.
I gotta tell you right now.
Separately, but there's really a review called
I'm saying hi in English. Well, you go first. Stop feeling embarrassed. How was Dan? In 2010, after a bachelor's but it was interesting, you asked the question, how many of you have been on the field about other people, and it was about pastors' kids. That verse became the theme verse for a podcast ministry that has been running for 9 years for pastors' kids. And it was all because of that conversation. So I wanted to tell you that kind of snowballed a lot of things. Now there's a lot of ministry happening for pastors' kids that haven't been happening before. So thank you for just sharing God's word and look forward to it's effective.
Wow, that is crazy.
I've been praying for Daniel for like the last 9 years too. I was
born that you know, once you get out of
at UT in Grand Forks, he's commercial agent. Well, it started out, and he's a music exporter. Yeah, it was a great place.
And then we live in northern Kenya on the study northwest Isiolo and Wamba.
He's a lighting instructor now.
And then
so then he'll continue on there for another
6, 8, 12 months, how long it takes.
Man, the friend of yours, Harold, upstairs.
Oh, Harold Johnson?
Yeah, he's like, I went to I stared over Rift Valley, and it was beautiful, took my breath away. So he told me about the guy. He goes, oh, I told you.
Yes. Harold was a financial aid officer at a college, and he came to the MP's school that our children were attending just to help parents as their kids were getting ready to go to college to understand the whole financial aid thing, tax returns and all that. He was really giving that kind of help. Just so, you know, there's things for anybody to do with even financial aid office.
Keep hitting send. Oh, that's why I keep hitting. I'm like, what am I pushing last week?
Now, what's the next step? You're back in Bethany, kind of like the last.
Just took it up now.
And then what? Wow, Mapunges.
Sharing that. It's just such a blessing to know that God, you know, sometimes ways that we don't even have a clue how God
I was enjoying it. Just speak a little bit Swahili. We haven't spoken in a long time.
What is our house?
We're working with the Karawi.
Mazoezi, Dio. You know, you can even, I think he said something like
yeah, he makes sure that we keep growing so he doesn't leave us.
So much.
Well, where did you go to learn your Swahili, or what did you do to learn your Swahili?
The first one, I usually read one of the pastors' wives. I've been on the missions course for and then after like class we got missionary, and we sit around town and practice what we learned, make friends, and like kind of get into the community that way. So it's so beneficial, I think. Like kind of killed like
You know, that language learning is ministry. It really is. Yeah.
That are spending
building those relationships.